Titans, go!
Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to Titan Talk, the Titans podcast, an occasional Doom Patrol podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Charles Skaggs, back in Doom Manor, ready to talk some Doom Patrol because Doom Patrol is the goodness. And thankfully, I'm joined once again by my wonderful co-host and fellow hockey aficionado, DJ Nick. How you doing? Nick?
Hey, Charles, I'm doing wonderful. You know, always happy to join you here to talk Doom Patrol. And yes, indeed, the hockey season is back. And I think we're both very happy. You know, your Blue Jackets won, my Canadians won. Hopefully we can get through this first round and into the playoffs.
Yeah, it would be kind of nice to see the Blue Jackets actually advance into a second round. That would be a nice change of pace. But, we have... obviously, the hockey season has been kind of thrown up in the air and delayed and whatnot because of the coronavirus. But right now, they're doing we're in the playoff season, and both of our teams are trying to advance to that next round, the second round. We have like 2 games more to win before we can advance. So fingers crossed.
Here's hoping.
Now, what would you do? What would you do if we could eventually face off against one another?
Ooh, that would be a tough one. Already, I have quite a few friends who are Penguins fans, and I can tell you, watching the games is a tough one because they're kind of messaging me back and forth. I'm like, don't talk to me, you know? And so it's tough. Yeah, my manager of my radio show is actually a huge Penguins fan. There's a good friend of mine over here in Italy who is, and yeah, I've been feeling a little bit of the heat right now from Penguins fans telling me, oh, you're going down, buddy, and stuff. I'm like, I'm not going to speak until it's over. I said, you don't talk until it's over.
Yeah, well, here in Ohio, a lot of hockey fans are Penguins fans because, the Penguins have been around a lot longer than the Blue Jackets.
Sure.
So there was that loyalty first. And then it kind of became like a dual loyalty, and then it almost became like just an inner city rivalry between the Pens fans and Blue Jackets fans. But hey, everybody out there probably doesn't care about that. They want to hear about Doom Patrol.
This is not a hockey podcast.
Yeah, this is not hockey talk. This is Titan talk. So we are going to talk, obviously, here at episode 56, we're talking Space Patrol. And this is the 6th episode of Doom Patrol Season 2. Just came out on July 16th, 2020. Obviously, we're still a few weeks behind. Written by Neil Reynolds, who wrote the previous episodes, Donkey Patrol and Therapy Patrol in Season 1, and then he wrote Time Patrol, which we discussed here for Season 2. And this one was directed by Kristen Windell, who is new to Doom Patrol, but I thought this one was pretty solidly directed, especially considering it's very effects heavy, this episode. And especially with those, the moon scenes that obviously they shot in a studio because, hey, I'm guessing they're not going to go through the production costs of rocketing the team up to the lunar surface, and then back. I'm guessing that would kind of blow the budget. Yeah.
And they don't have Nolan's money either to do Interstellar, so that's understandable.
Yeah, because he took Christopher Nolan took all the money for Tenet, so you know how that goes. So there probably wasn't that much left in the kitty. But otherwise, this is a great episode. I really enjoyed this one. We advanced the Candlemaker storyline a little bit. Some potentially big things for Larry that I want to talk about. We further the mystery of Ronnie Evers and some big changes for Jane. So we got a lot to talk about in this one. Nick, what was your general thoughts about this episode?
So far, as I said, this season has been solid as all get out. I mean, I've really been enjoying it. I actually think dare I say it's better than season one? It could be a hot take on my part. But to me, they actually...
Even with the absence of Mr. Nobody.
Yeah, exactly. But I think, you know what? Mr. Nobody was such a strong part of season one. They were able to up the game with the Candlemakers. You and I, we kind of did a bit of a comparison between Mr. Nobody and the Candlemaker last time. But yeah, it just is so solid. And I think this episode was no different. I really enjoyed it. We got, like you were saying, a little bit more of Larry Trainor's story and what he's going through. The consequences of what happened in the previous episode, of course, of Baby Doll being killed by the Candlemaker.
And Flaming Katie, too, as well.
And Flaming Katie, yeah. And so I was so excited to see, obviously, the aftermath. I mean, you just are on tenterhooks waiting for the week to roll around so you can watch the next episode. So I was really excited about this one. And I think my excitement was satisfied.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, we had that great cliffhanger, and especially with Jane left covered in wax. And obviously this episode picks right up with that. So I do have a little bit of trivia and a little bit of casting news I want to get to really quickly if you can indulge me a little bit. In addition to the return of Phil Morris as Silas Stone, we get the introduction of Mariana Klaveno as Valentina Vostok, a.k.a. Negative Woman from the comics. And if think you've seen her before, you're probably a fan of HBO's True Blood, because she played the character Lorena on that series, and she was also in episodes of Designated Survivor, Dexter, and Alias, which is a particular favorite of mine. I highly recommend that show. That was the spy drama by J.J. Abrams, which kind of put him on the map back in the day with Jennifer Garner. We were introduced to Samantha Marie Ware as Miranda, the presumably lost persona inside Jane that threw herself into the well, but all of a sudden now she's back and back again. So tell a friend. And she's been in episodes of Glee and most recently on God Friended Me, if you're at all familiar with that show. So I just thought I'd give them a quick mention. Trivia. If you want learn a bit more about Valentina Vostok, about Negative Woman, so I got some details here. So she first appeared in 1977's Showcase number 94, which was the first appearance of the new Doom Patrol. That was basically Cliff Steele and assorted new characters, because the original Doom Patrol had been blown up at the end of their original series, and presumably dead, even though eventually they all come back later on, bit by bit. But at this point, only Robot Man was known to have survived. And she was created by Paul Kupperberg and Joe Staten. And as a lieutenant colonel of the Soviet Air Force, Valentina, she stole an experimental Russian fighter plane in order to defect to the U.S. Keep in mind, this is 1977 when we still had the Soviet Union. And the plane malfunctioned en route, and she crashed at the exact spot where the original Doom Patrol had presumably perished. And this caused her to fuse with the negative energy spirit, the negative spirit that formerly inhabited the body of Larry Trainor. However, instead of being able to cast out the negative spirit for like a period of time of 60 seconds or whatever, like Negative Man, she gained the ability to kind of transform into Negative Woman herself. Now, years later, turns out, that wacky chief, Niles Calder, manipulated Valentina's transformation in order to create a replacement for Larry Trainor. So this is another instance of where the chief was revealed to be responsible for the creation of a member of the Doom Patrol. Now, as she took the identity of Negative Woman, Valentina became a member of the new Doom Patrol, and then she got romantically involved with teammate Joshua Clay, whom we were introduced to in season 1 of the TV show. But in the comics, he's the Doom Patrol member known as Tempest. And but she broke off the relationship because her body eventually changed further, and she became permanently radioactive, like Larry Traynor, and requiring her to constantly wear those bandages and be a more traditional superhero-like Negative Man. So a little bit of a tragedy there. But just in case anybody was wondering about this character, so here, and we're obviously going to talk about this, Valentina has a negative spirit inside her. And that's something that Larry never considered. And so he's found someone just like him, only someone who's able to control that negative spirit. So that's going to be a lot of fun to talk about, I think.
Definitely. And Charles, I actually wanted to add something here. I mean, I know I might be jumping ahead just a little bit, but, when it came to character of Valentina Vostok, didn't we also see a version of her in Legends of Tomorrow as well in season 1?
Yes, we did. Now, she was, it was in an episode where they had traveled to the Soviet Union in the past, and where Firestorm was captured, and especially with Dr. Martin Stein.
Yeah.
And I think the actress's name in that was Stephanie Corneliuson.
Yeah, that is correct. Yes.
Yeah. So even though we didn't get to see her in bandages, which I was very disappointed by.
Yeah.
Kind of like I was here, but that's okay.
Because here, they gave her, they made her almost into sort of a Russian version of Firestorm, or at least that was the concept, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and they already had like a Russian version of Firestorm from the comics by the name of Pojar.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm not sure what the purpose of that was, but the Berlanti-verse, the Berlanti Arrowverse tends to make changes that I'm not sure they really need to change. So,
not necessarily. But I guess, fan theory, it could be that we have, being different Earths, maybe it was a Valentina Vostok from a different Earth.
I'm sure it was, yeah, because we know that the Doom Patrol are set on their own Earth. They kind of established that at the end of Crisis.
That's right. So that's what I think. Maybe this is a doppelganger from that.
Yeah, I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is. So just a little different, but sure. Yeah, we had seen Valentina. You're absolutely right. I appreciate you bringing that up. That we had seen her on Legends of Tomorrow, at least in a couple episodes. Yeah. All right. Like I said, we got a lot to talk about. So let's start digging into this. Topic number 1, we're going to talk about the Chief, Cliff, Dorothy, and of course the Candlemaker, because where Dorothy treads, the Candlemaker is sure to follow and loom menacingly over her shoulders.
Even on the moon, she can't be
alone. Right. like I went to the frickin' moon, okay, and you're still here? No, so. Anyway. It's like, leave me alone already. Jeez.
There's no shaking this guy.
I know, right? He's like the worst stalker ever. So Nick, any thoughts about, this is obviously kind of like one of our central stories in this episode, in addition to Larry. So, we get Dorothy being extremely upset over the death of Baby Doll and Flaming Katie at the hands of the Candlemaker. Gets a hold of a spacecraft and somehow knows exactly how to pilot that thing. How? We don't know.
Well, you know what? If Flash Gordon can learn how to pilot things at random, I suppose Dorothy Spinner can too.
That's true. You pull out the whole, like, hey, I'm a superhero, so therefore I know how to fly a rocket ship, right? So, it's probably especially if, it was one of those things that her father had invented. The ship had, the Icarus that she hijacks. Her father had invented that. So maybe just intuitively, I don't know, I'm just rolling the dice here that maybe she figured it out. I don't know.
Unless one of her one of her imaginary friends knows how it's like, you push this button, then you push this button, then you do this. I don't know.
Yeah,
It's like
her imaginary friend Buzz Lightyear apparently knew how to fly it. I don't know, but it's a good question. So anyway, she goes off and she goes to the moon.
Yeah.
With the chief and Cliff following in another ship that the chief just happens to have in his garage.
And who doesn't, right?
Right. And I'm sure it's been decades since he's looked at it, but like maybe takes like all of 5 minutes to start up again, and boom, we're off. No problem.
It's Niles colder.
Right. So I know there's a lot going on here. So what did you make of this whole? I don't want to say fiasco, but just this whole craziness that is once again Doom Patrol here.
That I think is the beauty of the show, because I think obviously in any other TV show this would not fly, no pun intended. It's just like it wouldn't work.
Yeah.
But I think
so. You have an ape girl flying a rocket ship up to the moon, and then her dad just happens to have another one, flies after her. Yeah, with a robot, sidekick there. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, I think, if it were another show, we'd probably be tearing this thing to pieces. But I think in this case, we've been used to so much weirdness. And believe you me, folks, it gets even weirder.
Oh, yeah.
And so I guess we kind of buy into it. But when it actually comes to the what we got to see, you know what? I love Cliff Steele so much because we actually got to see the softer side of the man this time around. And I thought it was just beautiful. I mean,
you're talking about that conversation that he and Dorothy had, right? On the moon?
Yeah. Correct. Yeah. I mean, we had seen a little bit of that, I suppose, in season 1 with him and Jane when he was trying to get closer to Jane. And we know, and it shows that he can be a good guy. I mean, he's not just a cussing machine who is a self-centered cussing machine. He actually does have a heart. And I thought it was beautiful. I mean, also the fact that, he kind of has to put his plans on hold because the chief has to go and get his daughter. And of course, he's irritated as all get out. He's like, I've got this finger, let's do something. He's like, Dorothy's missing. And he's like, what?
Yeah, like who the F cares about Dorothy? I've got this guy's finger. And so this is like, this is it to figuring out the key. This is Cliff is so convinced that this finger is the key to figuring out his ability to touch things again.
Yeah. And so you have to feel bad for him. It's kind of all his plans falling flat because once again, in his mind, this dumb kid got lost and he has to go find her. And, after a while, he's like, okay, I'll buy into it. And then he's blown away by the spaceship. And I thought that was hilarious. And I actually, you were mentioning this. I actually had to check myself saying, I'm actually enjoying this guy who is flying a spaceship to the moon with a robot man.
Yeah.
And this ship is like piloted by some weird goat magic stuff going on. And you're like, what was with the goat head and stuff?
And he uses an apple to start the ignition, I guess, but, there's a great quote that I have, Cliff's response to that. So I'm going to save that because I don't want to spoil it. It's such a great quote.
It is.
But what I love most about Cliff and Dorothy, their sequence was Cliff, who really has zero experience being a father. He wasn't able to be the father that he wanted for his daughter Clara. And, we'd seen him, especially like in recent episodes, where he's just dropping F-bomb after F-bomb after F-bomb. And sometimes amusingly, sometimes frustratingly. And, but here he is, the guy who, again, has no experience, sitting down with Dorothy and talking to her. And like you said, it brings out his softer side. And it's, I think what, just when you're like maybe at your wit's end with Cliff, maybe you get a little frustrated with him. He reveals that softer side comes out that make you stop and think and reevaluate his character, because it shows he has more depth than maybe even he probably realizes. And he's able to kind of tap into that natural fathering instinct that he wasn't able to give his natural daughter, but he does it for Dorothy, someone who he starts off being just completely aggravated by, is perfectly willing to forget about because she happened to hurt Jane. And he puts all that aside because he sees Dorothy crying. And he tries to calm her down and talk to her and get her to open up. And it just was very surprising, and I really love that sequence.
Oh, it's a beautiful. It was, the dialogue was so well written, and I think it's wonderful to see that, he might seem very sort of selfish, like a lot of these characters seem to be at first.
Right.
It's kind of all about me kind of thing, but it goes to show there is more to that than their self-centeredness and their selfishness, and that they can actually do things for other people. There is that side to them too, and I think that's it was wonderful to see here. And I think we also got to see a little bit more of that in Niles too. I mean, okay, he is still focused on the fact is I have to protect her, or rather I have to protect the world from her, and so I can't have her gallivanting around the galaxy with the kind of powers that she's got. But I think he does generally, really, as we said before, I think he does generally love her, and he really does want to do everything in his power to protect her. But it's interesting how a little care goes a long way, and I think he could take notes from Cliff, which is really odd to say.
Yeah.
But the way Cliff talks Dorothy down, Niles should take notes from that. Because that's
well, we talked about Niles and his rather poor parental experience.
Yeah.
Or that he's not a natural father. And I think you're absolutely right. I think, but as weird as it sounds, especially for this show, right? Cliff is a better father than Niles is.
Yes.
Even after not having been a father, really. So, he was a father for a little bit, but most of the time he was just off. When he was human, he was spending half of his time, having sex with a nanny.
Yeah.
And he wasn't as focused as he could have been. But it's kind of a credit here that after everything he's been through, that he's kind of evolved to the point where, he would be a good father.
Exactly.
And, he does try that a little bit with Jane. And Jane, in season 1, then Jane kind of rebuffed him saying, look, I'm not your daughter. And I don't want to be treated like that. So they kind of reevaluated into more of a friendship.
Yes.
But here, it was great to see. Just a lot of great heart in that. And then, the cliffhanger, no pun intended, at the end.
Of course.
Think about it. It's a cliffhanger. Get it? Literally.
Yeah.
So the chief, everybody, it looks like they're all going to Earth, and the chief is, telling Cliff, look, it looks all lovey-dovey. Niles is hugging his daughter, and he says he makes her promise, to never make another wish and all that. And then Cliff, talks about, hey, they're going home, but then Niles turns around and says, no, we're not going home.
Yeah.
And Cliff is like, wait, what? And then the next thing you know, Niles is hitting that ejector button, and Cliff gets sucked right out into space.
Yeah, and at first I was like, I felt like, what the hell,
And
dude?
it's just like, Chief! Again. You did it again, you magnificent bastard, you.
and I actually thought to myself why? Granted, okay, we will get the answer next episode.
Well, we both kind of know why, because we've seen the episode, but...
Yeah.
Yeah.
But to kind of play dumb a little bit.
Yeah.
I
did kind of just blow the mystery, the magic here, didn't I, with that?
Yeah. Oh, well.
Sorry.
But no, what I was just thinking, when I first saw this, not knowing what came after, I said, he's just throwing the guy into space, and Lord knows where he's going to end up, because you have no guarantee of where he might end up. We know where he ends up, but it's like you kind of are like flabbergasted because you're like, why did he do this? Is what's the chief's
his goal here? So it just were you just you were completely stunned by that? You never saw that one coming?
Not at all, because I was like, okay, they're going to go back and make
that'll
be hunky-dory, but they'll go back. But he kicks the guy out and like, why did you do that? My jaw hit the floor. Like,
right.
Why?
Well, it's great because it shows how unpredictable the chief is.
Yeah, but he'll throw you out of the spaceship at moment's notice.
So always make sure your seatbelt is fastened. I'm just
saying.
Or
don't go putting your when he asks you to check on put the helmets away.
Yeah,
don't
do it. Yeah, because it's like put your own damn helmets away, Chief. I'm not getting sucked out. I'm not falling for that again. But
that blew my mind. And to go back to the candle maker, granted, okay, we don't actually see him, but he is that constant presence. And as we were saying,
we hear him, and we know that he's there.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, he's there because the voice is there. And it just keeps you wanting more of like, what's he up to? What are we going to get? Because obviously they're upping the tension more and more and more and more. And it's like, this is eventually going to come to a head and we'll see what the Candlemaker's kind of master plan is. And Dorothy's just shocked once again that the fact that he is so coherent as it when able to speak in full sentences. She's like, you never used to be like this. I mean, she'd said this before, but even here she's like shocked that he can talk the way he does.
Yeah, and he makes the explanation that, as you're growing, so am I, which is a very scary idea. Right?
It is.
So the Candlemaker's growing in power, growing in intelligence, and he tells her, he talks about like big girl wishes have big girl consequences, and he says he'll always be at her side until like Dorothy yells at him to go away.
Yeah, that's right.
And of course it's not going to be for long, but yeah, just the menace there, and the fact that I think, and it was at first I was a little when we first saw the Candlemaker, he's only speaking very in monosyllabic terms. He's speaking like very one syllable words, and they're very simple. And then
it was like make wish or
exactly,
stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. Like fire bad, tree pretty, like I talked about, and and now he's much more eloquent. And as a result, I think he becomes even more menacing.
Yeah.
Because he feels like you feel like that he's got a little bit more in the ball. That means he's thinking, he's changing, he's evolving, and which is never a good thing when you're dealing with a villain. When they start upping their own game, not a good sign, not a good look. So,
I mean, he definitely has his, more than a firm toehold in her imaginary world. If we were to compare it to like an underground, if you will, it's kind of like he is now dominating almost that underground. He's taking it over more and more.
Yeah, and he keeps trying to isolate her from the others.
Yeah.
To basically feel that he's the only thing she needs. And as he continues to grow in strength. So just a great. I love the development that we're getting with the Candlemaker, and can't wait to. We still, you and I, we still have the season finale coming up to watch. Mm-hmm. So I'll be curious to see how that all resolves itself without giving too much away in between.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's but yeah, there's some great things to come. That's all I'm going to say.
Exactly. All right. Anything else about these characters before we move on?
No, I think that pretty much says it all. I mean, it's just like you just wonder at this point, where do we go from here? What is the chief's, objective, as we were saying? Where's he taking Dorothy?
Right.
Since he said they're not going back home, and so of course the big question mark is where are they off to? And of course, all questions will be answered.
Exactly. And of course, Cliff is not going to be happy with the idea of being launched into space, back to Earth. So, yeah.
Yeah, those who miss Cliff mouthing off, you're going to get a lot of it.
Yeah, pretty much. Needless to say, he doesn't take it too well. But, yeah, go figure, right? All right, topic number 2. Let's talk about Larry. And we'll talk about Negative Woman, a.k.a. Valentina Vostok. And the Pioneers of the Uncharted. Which, if you're a comics fan, you kind of figured out, hey, Pioneers of the Uncharted sounds an awful lot like the Challengers of the Unknown. Another DC Comics classic, but I'm guessing for whatever reason, probably because, hey, we just kind of kill off these characters in this very same episode, they decided, well, we want something sort of like the Challengers, but we don't want to actually waste the Challengers in a one-off episode. So
maybe like a homage or like a wink to them, as it were. I guess
pretty much, or at least as that kind of 50s throwback group. So what did you make of these characters, especially the introduction of Valentina, who is almost, as we find out in this episode, knows a lot more about the negative spirit than Larry does, and someone that Larry never thought that there might be another person out there like him.
Which I think kind of throws him off quite a bit. I mean, she's an incredibly beguiling character. I was very much enthralled by this character. I mean, granted, okay, her 2 fellow astronauts, you know, we do find out later
Zip
that they
and Specs, yes.
I'm the brains of the operation.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that.
Because he has the glasses, yeah, of course.
Of course, you have glasses, you're brainy, you know.
Yeah, you're right.
1 + 1, right? But no, to make a point on Valentina Vostok, I loved her. I mean, granted, it seems like at first Larry does not take to her at all. He's like, you know, who the heck are you to give me life advice and everything? But she is basically the insult that he gives her, because she is that very zen. She has that zen quality about her. She's kind of like that almost martial arts sensei who has mastered, you know, perfect inner peace, as it were, to use a Kung Fu Panda comparison. You know, she has mastered that inner peace, and that she's come to terms with her negative spirit. And the fact that she's actually able to keep her physical appearance intact, you know, not having to wear the bandages and stuff. Granted, it took her 5 years, but she got there.
Right.
And I just love this character. And granted, as you know, Charles, I do have a soft spot for Russian girls. So, you know.
Oh, okay. Is that where this is coming into play? I see. Okay.
It is.
Yes. Yeah, you do have a little bit. Yeah. You do have a history there, sir. Yes.
Yeah. And so, I mean, that aside, I mean, and plus I love the Russian accent. I think it's just beautiful. Some people find it odd. I actually find it kind of sexy, but that's just me. But I actually love this character. I mean, as I said, and also the actress does such a fantastic job. And I hope it won't be the last we get to see of her, as we do find out she just, you know, takes off and is going back to space. And
yes.
So I'm like, you know, but I love the life lesson she gives, and the brief relationship that her and Larry have, because at first we see he's very antagonistic, and then he warms up to, he's like, you maybe have something there with what you're telling me, you know?
Yeah, I mean, because with Larry, you know, he's coming right off of that horrible experience with his son.
Oh yes,
trying to kill him, yeah, and get him back, take him back to the Bureau of Normalcy. So he's now, granted, it's Larry. He's usually feeling pretty low about something. I mean, He is negative man after all, for a reason. He's negative man, and so then when Valentina comes around at this particular moment, I think it kind of upsets his apple cart a little bit, because it shows him his potential. That's something I don't think he ever considered. He never considered the idea of like, well, hey, I can maybe control the negative spirit. Maybe then I won't need these bandages, or, you know, and it kind of shows him, it gives him, without, I think, even realizing it, a little bit of hope for himself. For himself, and he's, you know, like you said, he's very interested in Valentina. wants to know more. She talks to him about going out into space. It's like, if you ever want a fresh perspective, space is a great place to do it. And I kind of wonder, if you remember, I was talking about, I think it was last episode where I was talking about Negative Man, where he became like an evolved form called Rebus.
Rebus, yeah.
Yeah, because in the comics they had the Larry fusing with a woman named Dr. Eleanor Poole, and Rebus eventually goes out into space. That's the last we see of Rebus's character during Grant Morrison's run. So I'm kind of wondering if they're setting something up maybe for season 3, especially with this truncated season, about whether maybe they'll do something. Maybe they're going to evolve Larry into Rebus, or incorporate some elements of that. What do you think? What do you think?
I would love to see that. Because I mean, just the way you're just talking about the Rebus character and stuff, I would love to see that realized on screen, and hopefully we do get there. And because I think this show has so much potential, whether you actually stick to the printed page or whether you decide to take in different directions. Because in this show, you can be super, super elastic and super, super out there.
Right.
And I think, the sky is the limit. Once again, no pun intended, but it really is. And I just love, going back to this, the philosophy that plays into this show as well, because this show can be ridiculous and silly, but it can also be incredibly philosophical as well. I think that's what we get also with Valentina Vostok, is that philosophy. And you were mentioning the fact of he could have realized his potential. It made me think of the Smallville episode where Clark meets Supergirl. And she has kind of all her powers realized.
Right.
And he's like, I'm barely kind of, learning how to run fast and master my strength. And she has it down and always says, oh, so you don't know how to fly yet? You don't know how to use this and stuff? So I kind of got that Smallville vibe a little bit. But plus, I'm a huge sucker for Smallville. But that's what I kind of got.
Understandable. As a Superman fan, I can totally understand that. So another thing I was thinking about just now that kind of makes me wonder about the whole Rebus thing was that, if you remember, they showed this connection between Larry and Valentina when they touched, like when they shake hands, and then later again in the episode where they're saying goodbye and they hug. It's like the negative spirits react to each other.
Yeah,
so I'm kind of wondering if they're going to set up to substitute Valentina for Dr. Eleanor Poole.
It could very well be, and also the fact
that way and then use that to make Larry into that hermaphroditic Rebus version. Because
what, I actually thought to myself, because if Larry was straight,
right,
that he'd be after Valentina immediately,
right,
seeing how connected they are. And so I was like, because I always think of what's his sexuality. So, obviously women are not his thing.
Yeah.
But he might go past that for all the greater good, or because the negative spirit, we can tell, is yearning to not be on Earth anymore. So maybe if he listens to the negative spirit, he might say, okay, let's head off to space. He's like, is that what you want, buddy? Kind of thing,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, it may not be that, like you said, Larry may not be attracted to Valentina, but the negative spirit might be attracted to Valentina's negative spirit.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, so that would be kind of interesting.
It would be.
I was Larry may be going like, dude, I'm not straight, okay? So give me
we could have that conversation.
Cut me a break here, pal. So I mean, granted, I've realized our options are limited, but anyway, I just thought that's funny. All right.
Even though, sorry to interrupt you, Charles,
Larry's
like, I don't want to go to space because, going to space means you're alone, and I still believe in family, even though the negative spirit kind of doesn't want to be there.
Yeah, but I mean, if Valentina's out there, he won't be alone, will he?
No, of course not. But I mean, I guess
he'll be giving up his Doom Patrol family. Yeah.
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 Yeah, or he gets to the point to where, like Valentina was saying, she's kind of severing the last ties she has to Earth, and he might take her up on that and do the same thing down the line. Who knows?
Yeah. So going back to Zip and Specs.
Yeah.
Wasn't quite sure what to make of these characters at first because, at first they kind of start off being 50s throwbacks, and you figure because we're getting the backstory that there was this trio, the pioneers of the Uncharted, that the chief sent out in the Icarus spaceship, and apparently they lost contact, and the chief thought they were dead, so he never gave them two thoughts, and then all of a sudden they show up, so. We figure, and then we're told that they were part of his Immortus initiative. So that would explain why they're long-lived. So we don't really consider them that, as we find out through the course of the story, it's not really them. It's not really Specs and Zip. They're essentially their husks, their bodies, that have been taken over by an alien organism and animated. So
very Doctor Who, I must say.
Right. It's true. It's kind of like Doctor Who meets Doom Patrol, almost. Who Patrol, if you will. See what I did there? But they ultimately, Valentina brought them back to kind of put them to rest because the originals are dead, as it turns out. So essentially, what they end up doing, her and Larry, they dig a grave to put them in, and even though it's not really them, she wants to bury them on Earth. And she makes this comment to Larry, well, hey, if there's any fruit that grows out from this, don't eat it. Trust me on this. So it'll probably be really bad. But I thought that was kind of interesting, pretty unexpected. And a
little bit unnerving too, as well, because
you're just going to leave these alien organisms buried in the earth, right?
Yeah,
no problem, right?
For Mulder and Scully to find later on, but
yeah, that takes us down a whole different road, doesn't it? Yes,
it does indeed.
It does.
No, but I mean, it's also unnerving because of the fact that they constantly repeat the same cycles. Same dialogue over and over again, which can get a little bit creepy. And then they're kind of almost like machines. They start running down. It's like the batteries are running down. Sort of like
exactly. Kind of so yeah, so it's almost like like when you have your iPod or something, or your MP3 player, that it starts running out of juice, and you're like, okay, if you can't recharge it, you just throw it away, and that's kind of what happens here. Maybe they couldn't be recharged or brought back, I don't know, but just so happened they finally ran out of gas at the right time, I guess. All right.
How convenient.
How convenient, right? So, but I'm kind of, back to Valentina just really quickly. I'm thinking we're going to probably see her again. What do you think?
I really, really hope so. And I think we will because of the fact that, she had such a significant impact on Larry. You have to think that they will meet up again. And I don't think the writers would just give us this brief parentheses and just, said, see how cool this character is? You're never going to see her again. I don't think they would do that to us.
Yeah.
I think there's more to it.
Yeah. It seemed like a pretty notable introduction. So fingers crossed, because I'd like to see more of Negative Woman.
Me too.
And I really like the fact that she's, with that Zen attitude, kind of maybe potentially to broaden Larry's horizons a bit. So
yeah, I think, you know what, there's an old saying, when the student is ready, the master will appear.
Yes.
And I think this is Larry's case.
Now, what movie was that from?
I'm drawing a blank here. I remember the quote, but I can't remember the movie.
Exactly. Maybe that's not, maybe that's kind of like Enter the Dragon.
It could very well be, yeah.
If I'm not mistaken. It sounds like something Bruce Lee would say, right?
Yes, exactly. That's why I love that quote so much.
Yeah, it's a great one. All right, let's move on. Topic number 3. So let's talk about Vic, and let's talk about Roni, and we can throw in Silas as well. So Vic has more sex with Roni because, hey, that's what you do, right? How long has it been for Vic? And he's He's got to lubricate that equipment of his, I guess.
He's a grown
so
boy. He needs it.
Exactly. Cyborg's got a cyborg, I guess. All right. So afterwards, Ronnie's getting dressed. He talks about having to pay off her medical bills. And this kind of gets a discussion going about what her medical expenses are. And apparently, it's outrageous. And because, this is the cost of her Black Ops involvement. And Vic's asked to see if he can look inside her, see what's broken so that he can relieve her pain. And they get talking about, she'll let him do it as long as he talks about his PTSD. And I thought that set up a nice discussion. But ultimately, this leads into Vic doing a little digging more into Ronnie's background and learning a few things about her and adding to her mystery. So what did you make of this development?
You know what? I mean, because you talked about the fact that Roni is a villain in the comics and such, and I am praying
as a male counterpart.
Yeah, I mean, I'm crossing with things and praying. It's like, please don't be a kind of a wolf in sheep's clothing here. Please don't, because Vic really needs this, and I feel so bad for Vic in that case. But I thought, and also, though I will say this, I've not been a fan of Silas Stone for a while, especially in the first season. But here, I think he actually has a point when he tells Vic, it's great that you're in love, but don't go overboard and don't, be overly generous in this case, because you've seen her past, maybe still be a little bit wary of that. And I think, because obviously Vic is seeing this through heart-shaped glasses, or rose-tinted glasses, if you will, as well. So I think he's like, I love this.
Or at least a rose-tinted artificial eye.
Even better.
Yeah, right. But, you like that metaphor?
Yeah. But I think that's the thing is, he's almost so blinded by love that he's like, okay, I'll hack into this and I'll do this, etc. Because, that's what us guys sometimes do when we're in love. It's like, we want to make our better half feel good, and so we might do things that we might regret later down the line. But at the time, it's like it sounded like a good idea at the time.
Because guys are notorious for doing really dumb things.
Yeah, try to impress a girl or
trying to impress a girl, exactly. So it's like, hey, baby, check it out. I can hack, the military computers. Check it out. And let me hack into Star Lab. So essentially, Vic, Mr. Superhero, clean cut, is breaking the law for her. So now, granted, she's not asking him to do this.
No, he's doing it of his own free will.
Right, but because he's curious about her this mystery that is her, and he's trying to, because after looking her over, he finds that there was all these attachments that were ripped out, and it causing this pain inside her. So he comes up with the idea of well, hey, we'll just hack the military computers. And maybe they'll have the answers we're looking for. No biggie, right? And Roni, to her credit, says, "Look, I don't want to be your redemption here. What happened to me is it's fair considering what I've done." But you notice Vic doesn't ask her about what she's done.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't sort of try and get more answers. I think he's just now, and it comes, of course, from a place of goodness, I think. I mean, he just wants to help her. Maybe it is the superhero syndrome of, there's a person in need, I'm going to go above and beyond, even if it means breaking the law. And I think that's what he's doing here. And he's almost not hearing her. He's totally focused on his mission. He's like, okay, I'm going to do all this stuff and help her out, regardless. And I think that's the problem. I mean, and Roni actually is trying to tell him stuff, and he totally almost ignores her, I think.
Yeah, she's throwing up all these warning signs, these red flags, that anybody that was more objective would be like, hey, wait a minute. Okay, we need to ask her about this. But Vic, like you said, is essentially head over heels in love. And as a result, he's thinking with some other equipment right now.
Yes.
And not really thinking with his head. And as a result, he's making bad choices, bad decisions. And so when you, like you said, you bring up Silas, that Silas is trying to talk him down, like, look, you're like, it's great that you're in love, but you need to slow down, kid. And the question is, I don't think Vic is going to be able to heed that advice.
No. Or when he tries to maybe slam on the brakes, it'll be too late. It could even be that too. So, it's one of those. And for once, Silas actually gives good advice, which comes from a fatherly and good place.
Yeah. Well, I mean, on the father scale, I would probably, given what we have seen so far, we would probably put Cliff at the top, then maybe Silas, then the chief, right?
Which is such a weird sort of scale, but yeah, I agree with you totally.
And then obviously, well, to be fair, obviously at the way bottom is Jane's father, but
oh yes, but
that goes without saying, yeah. But the chief, is probably hovering pretty close. I'm just saying, yeah, hovering pretty close to that level. Now, in the process of digging up some information, Vic comes out, learns that, well, hey, Star Labs has done some business with these Black Ops guys. And Silas tells him, well, I kind of had to do that because, hey, you needed fixing.
Yeah, it's like, where do you that money was used for you, as it were.
Exactly. So the question is, like, so is essentially the reason, Vic being cyborg, Silas having saved Vic's life, has some dark money attached to that.
Which will probably come back and haunt him even more so.
I'm sure it will, because especially if, that Black Ops company kind of sees Vic as an investment later on. So we'll see. Anything else about Vic and Roni? Once again, you just kind of wait to see where they go from here. And I thought it was a nice nod there was to Star Labs as well. And it makes you think, it's because obviously folks who don't know, maybe within the comics, think of Star Labs and you think of The Flash, the TV show. Exactly.
But how could, good people like Cisco and Barry and stuff do this kind of deal? Obviously it's...
Well, it's like, and meanwhile, DC Comics fans know, like many other comics, where Star Labs not exactly the most benevolent company.
Yeah, so listeners, if you haven't read the comics, don't think that Star Labs is just Cisco, Killer Frost, and Barry Allen. There's much more than that.
It's not. Star Labs is more than just Cisco coming up with supervillain names.
Yeah, exactly.
Just saying. A lot of it not good.
No.
So just putting it that way. All right. Fourth final topic. I'm going to combine topics here. So I want to talk about Rita a little bit, and then I want to talk about Jane. Rita, I think we could talk about quickly, because Rita finally, gets to go on her little acting endeavor with the Cloverton. I forget what they're called, but the
Cloverton Players or something like
that. Something like that. So, and she goes there presumably for a production of Our Town.
Yeah.
The classic play, but turns out it's something completely different, even though it has the same name, as we're told. So that woman Isabel, excuse me, it was Mickey, right? Mickey, the old, the woman that was in charge of the production that Rita had kind of auditioned for at the home improvement store. She's there, and they talk about, apparently, Rita's introduced to an actress named Isabel Feathers, and during the course of it, Rita finds out that what they're doing is essentially telling the story of the day Covington was sucked into the ground, that we saw in Doom Patrol. Was it episode 2?
It was episode 2 of season 1. Yeah.
Yeah. So
it's a reenactment, basically.
It's a reenactment, and obviously the moment or the time when Rita and the team went in town, and Rita goes in that bar and then kind of loses control and becomes this rampaging blob monster that rummages through the entire, like, the main street of the town. And obviously there was, it's traumatized some people a little bit, and they decided, well, hey, we'll just turn this into a play. And Rita is understandably horrified by this.
Yeah, exactly. Especially when she finds out that the girl who's going to play her is, and sees, during rehearsal what her character is like, and I guess she has also the script in front of her and such. So, yeah. I blame her.
And essentially Rita is thought of in the play as the blob lady.
Yeah. A mindless monster, basically, that's kind of...
Right. And, Rita, tries to gently nudge the Isabel into kind of like thinking, well, hey, maybe there's more to the blob lady than you think. Because villains always, see themselves as the hero of their story, right? So maybe you're not approaching this the right way. And I think she was trying to maybe redeem the character a little bit, or do what she could to try to salvage the character from people's perceptions, but I'm not sure how much that's going to take.
No, and you know what, though, personally, Charles, I would actually like to see the version of Our Town, just for the heck of it, to see what in the world they do, and also, excuse me,
the Doom Patrol version of Our Town would be pretty hilarious.
I would love to see that. We already have Steel and Stone, which we really want to see, and now there's this. And
Steel and Stone, getting it done. Steel and Stone, troubles on the run.
I love that. And also we don't actually get to see Rita's audition or performance. We only get to hear it from Isabel, who says, "Your performance was fantastic as the beekeeper. Who knew? So many bees had died and all this." And you're like, I wonder what she had to say. We do find out later, but it's like,
I'm kind of wondering if we're eventually gonna see that production.
Yeah.
I think we will see it maybe at some point.
Sure.
Maybe with the entire Doom Patrol in the audience or something watching this. What do you think?
I think that would be kind of cool. Is they kind of end up in the theater and they see themselves on stage, and I can so see Cliff being like, "What the f? I'm not like that," or something like
exactly. That. There's a lot of there's a potential there. We'll see if it happens, but that could be pretty funny. Let's see. So I guess that let's talk about Jane a little bit. So unless you had anything else about Rita,
when it came to you, Charles, what did you make of Rita and the fact that she gets to be in a play and kind of go back to her the acting world?
Well, I thought obviously we talked about how important it is to her to prove to her mother that she has natural acting talent, but this with this subject matter is going to prove very challenging for Rita because it hits so close to home, and talking about her own failure to control herself. So I think this is going to take a supreme effort on her part. Hopefully she'll overcome it. I'm guessing she will, but we'll have to wait and see how this plays out, I think.
Yeah, very much. Already she kept it together when Isabel was telling her, this woman must have been so evil and so terrible and stuff. And all she does is kind of, clutch her bosom.
She clutches her face, a little bit, trying to, expecting it to start collapsing on her. Yeah. But it doesn't.
No, they would very much keep it together, and it's like, I have a nemesis, and then she leaves. That's it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. All right, so let's talk about Jane. We were, picking up for the events of last episode. We have a funeral.
Yeah.
Two funerals, in fact. So we have the alters, Jane's personality, saying goodbye to Flaming Katie and to Baby Doll. And to the point where they even have a funeral service. And this is something that Jane is having a really hard time with because as far as she's concerned, death doesn't really matter to them. And it kind of puts her at odds with some of her personalities.
Yeah.
And ultimately, Jane is confronted with the return of Miranda, and who essentially takes control over Jane, becomes the primary. And so it's a pretty big development here. So what did you make of the debut of Miranda and her asserting control over the girl?
Well, to go back to the initial point you made about the funeral procession and the fact that they, and they literally go back.
I know there's a lot there, yeah.
I mean, they literally go back to the well, literally, and
right.
And just
I see what you did there. Yes.
And and what I thought was interesting was, of course, as you said, we have two funerals because above ground they are, putting Zed and Specs to rest. While here we have the personas being thrown down the well. And I thought what was interesting was you can tell that Jane is very suspicious about this, like you were saying. It's like, we've never done this before. Why are we doing it now? And so she seems like very untrusting of when it comes to everything that's going on. She's like, why are they doing this? Was I not made aware of something? Is there something?
Did they miss a meeting? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, is there something more at play that I don't know about? So there is that, because usually she's very suspicious about it all. And then when, of course, we get Miranda, I was very impressed, I must say, for just because we didn't see her for long in this episode. Right. But I was very impressed by how commanding she is, by how she just has that charisma. You can tell she's a very charismatic character.
She has presence, yeah.
And in fact, all the other personalities are immediately in awe of her, and they almost seem to follow her instantly because she has that almost this very strong personality. To where I think even Jane is at odds. She's like, yeah, it looks like she knows the score here. I don't know what to do, because we actually see earlier Jane going to seek advice and asking the girl they're protecting herself.
Yeah, the actual Kay, young Kay.
Yeah, she actually seeks advice with Kay, saying, what am I supposed to do? And of course, Kay answers her, that's your job, not mine. I can't tell you what to do. You're kind of the leader here. You're the one supposed to be leading.
You're the primary, so you should be the one making these decisions.
Yeah, calling the shots and all this kind of thing. And Jane is totally at a loss, and I think Miranda is kind of just the icing on the cake, because you can see that she's so sure of herself, and Jane is slowly losing that grip of power and that personality to where she did have that over the other personalities. I think, she's like, she realizes she's beaten here and she can't really do much aside from kind of maybe protesting with the personality, saying, why are we throwing these people in the well? Because I was actually going to ask you this, Charles, because I might have forgotten this. Technically, can the personalities die in the underground?
Well, that's what we were told. We were told that, if you remember, in season 1, we were told that Miranda died.
Yeah, because she threw herself.
She threw herself in the well. So, and presumably that we thought she was gone forever, but then all of a sudden, here in this episode, well, there she is. She's back, and so that kind of upsets our expectations a little bit. We're not quite sure, like, can they die? And so the question is, how did Miranda come back? Why is Miranda back? What's her game plan here? And right off the bat, these two, Miranda and Jane, are set at odds with each other because Miranda projects, like you said, this confidence, this charisma, and this eerie calm. And she states things in a very matter-of-fact way. And Jane, meanwhile, is much more volatile, emotional, and as a result, she comes off looking bad in comparison, especially to the other personalities. Yeah. So so they're less inclined to side with her, and their other personalities end up gravitating toward Miranda.
I mean, it's like a political debate, Are you going to follow the candidate that seems super sure of themselves? You're going to go the one who maybe seems like a little bit shaky and doesn't seem to have the answers, and the other one says they have the answers, but they might not have them.
Yeah, and then Miranda ends up telling Jane, well, we're supposed to do what the girl wants.
No.
I know what the girl wants. Do you? And Jane finally has to admit, no, I don't. So she has to step aside as primary and let Miranda take over. And which is a very hard thing for her to do. And because once Miranda takes over, then she'll show what Kay wanted.
At least in her eyes.
At least in her eyes, exactly. That's a great point. And so this has real world ramifications because Miranda's emergence ultimately results in Crazy Jane's body coming out of that wax and coming out of her coma. And but the question is now, okay, with Miranda behind the wheel, what's going to happen next?
Yeah, because I believe that our members of Doom Patrol have never met Miranda yet. So
no, they haven't. So this is going to be another of Jane's personas having to introduce themselves to the Doom Patrol, and we'll see what Miranda makes of that.
It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, it is. As we kind of know a little bit already, but we don't want to spoil that here yet. We got plenty of other episodes to talk about.
Yeah, exactly. We try to keep this spoiler free for you listeners out there.
Exactly, because we'll be here all night talking about this stuff. All right. Anything else about this episode? There's a lot. Like I said, there was a lot to dive into here. So
I think by and large we covered most of the important ground to cover. And, it was just a fantastic episode, and I love always these parallels between what's going on in the underground, what's going on, ups. And I think what is fantastic is they are able to juggle multiple storylines, but do it seamlessly. Because now that you have, the Chief and Dorothy somewhere, you've got Jane dealing with her stuff, you've got Larry dealing with this, it never gets lost. It's actually so well structured, I think, for a 50-minute episode, even less.
And it's a credit to the writers because there are a lot of spinning plates going on here. And somehow they're still able to keep things going without it crashing on them and losing control. It's just, it amazes me. And I'm continually impressed by the writing in this series. Yeah.
And you're used to non-linear narration with David Lynch, so
yeah.
And seeing how well, folks like David Lynch do it, I'm sure you can appreciate it here even more. Because granted, it's more linear, but you have multiple storylines going on at once.
Yeah, and even though sometimes it gets weird, it's not exactly like the surreal Lynch weird. So it's a little easier to comprehend, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Or maybe it is just for me by comparison because, like I've overloaded on so much David Lynch, like as we talked about on Ghostwood, the Twin Peaks podcast, that maybe by comparison, Doom Patrol is like your standard, straightforward network TV fare by comparison. I don't know, but...
Well, yeah, I mean, but that, because David Lynch is like the masterclass of nonlinear storytelling.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. All right, so favorite quotes. Do you have any favorite quotes?
I do actually have a few.
Go for it.
Okay, so one I really liked was between Larry and Rita. Larry saying, "I'm sorry my son sold us out." And Rita's like, "Why are you apologizing? You were trying to make amends." And Larry's like, "And apparently they'd all be better off if I were dead." And Rita answers, "Well, that may be true, but I would be bereft." So I thought that was sweet, but a little bit okay.
Then, the way April Bowlby delivers that line, she's like, "But I would be bereft," and it's just like it's kind of cold, but there's a sweetness to it because we know that those two characters have a bond.
Yeah, because it almost seemed like a backhanded compliment, but it was great. Then another one between obviously Rita and Larry carrying on with that conversation is Rita's like, well, go ahead and say it. I'm a vain, selfish person who'd rather chase fame than support you in your time of need. And Larry's like, first, I'm not in the time of need. I'm in the time of regret and self-loathing. Second, I doubt it's fame you're chasing by joining the Cloverton Players. And she's like, they're very well reviewed in the Cloverton Bugle.
That's great stuff.
And finally, Dorothy and Cliff. Dorothy saying to Cliff, I'm going to stay up here away from anyone I can hurt forever. And Cliff's like, I don't think that's how oxygen works.
That was a great line. I almost had that line. I ran out of space on my page, but I almost picked that line. That was such a good, solid line.
And what about you, Charles? What quotes do you have?
Let's see. I've got Niles and Cliff. I kind of hinted about this earlier, where Niles is talking about his ship, and Niles says, in the 50s, science still hadn't mastered basic rocketry, so I mixed my science with a little bit of borrowed magic. And Cliff replies, you know what? I think you can solo this one, Chief. I'm not in a rush to get stranded in some space on your homebrew devil ship.
I loved it.
So, homebrew devil ship. Anyway.
There you go.
I love that a lot. Let's see. Larry with Cliff saying, but there's something else you should see. And Cliff replies, is it Dorothy playing dress up with Rita's skin?
Oh, yeah, because before that, he was like, Dorothy put Jane in the comb.
Yes, that was good. Larry's talking about his son a little bit, saying, my son killed himself because he was obsessed with his absentee father. And if that's not worth being tormented by, I don't know what is.
Yeah, that's a good one, too.
That's very Larry.
Yeah.
And lastly, Cliff saying, so if her imaginary friends took out two of Jane's imaginary selves, do we need to have an imaginary intervention?
Yeah, the writing is so good in this show.
The dialogue is so crisp. I love so many great lines. I'm someone who really appreciates well-written dialogue.
Well, so you being a writer yourself.
I mean, it just, I love dialogue that just sings, and the banter is just so quick and back and forth. Because I'm a fan of the old, movies from the 40s where they had characters fast-talking career gals, and bantering back and forth with their guy, and especially if you ever watched the movie The Hudsucker Proxy.
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about.
I
do.
Yeah,
Lee.
That kind of back and forth,
that back and forth,
pong, and it's just going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
Or like the '80s TV series Moonlighting. We talked about that before. I love that stuff. I love that banner back and forth, and especially the actors. They can carry off those incredible lines of dialogue. So this show is no exception. All right, what's your rating, sir?
I'm going to give this an 8.5 out of 10 goat heads.
Nice. I wonder if that goat head knows Baphomet.
Could be. Maybe they're friends somewhere.
Maybe they dated at some point. I don't know. Although I'm guessing Willoughby Kipling would be a little jealous.
Yeah.
Because we know how he feels about Baphomet, don't we?
Yes, we do.
All right. We're in sync. I give this one 8.5 as well, but I'm going to give it 8.5 out of 10. Spaceships in the garage.
Nice.
It was either that or robot men ejected into space.
And I'm still reeling from that and going, gee.
Yeah, exactly. That's great. So I don't have any Titans Tower news, but we do have some more Tell It to Titan Talk feedback from a certain Holly Mack.
Ooh.
So we'll read that really quickly because Holly is very short and to the point, shall we say.
Indeed. She's very concise. She has the gift of being a concise writer.
Exactly. So, which is great because we're probably running long as it is. So Holly writes in, and it's great to hear from you. Hey, Charles and Nick. Writing, of course, about Space Patrol. So she says, the fallout from the Candlemaker's wish is made clearly known in this episode. Rita misunderstanding the Our Town play, interesting play on words. Niles knowing how bad the situation with Dorothy is when Cliff finds her body and then a spaceship out of nowhere. Just a typical Thursday for the Doom Patrol. Niles borrowing magic to make the spaceship, not surprised at all. I don't blame Dorothy for running away and becoming more cautious about the Candlemaker. You can't be too cautious where the Candlemaker is concerned. Poor Rita and the giving advice and the making of an enemy to the girl that was playing her. Well, I think I don't think the girl sees Rita as an enemy. I think Rita just saw her as an enemy.
Yeah, it's Rita for sure.
I think it's pretty so far I think it's at least one-sided.
Yeah, it is.
Dorothy talking to Cliff and saying that she's a bad person and going to stay on the moon forever. Cliff is trying his best to connect with Dorothy, and I think he may have when asking about the rock that she had with her. I enjoyed the Pioneer storyline. Miranda coming back, this should be very interesting. I'll wrap it up here. Holly from Wisconsin.
Thank you, Holly. Always great to hear from you.
It is great. And obviously, Holly on the Five-ish Fangirls podcast is, we definitely encourage everybody to check out the Five-ish Fangirls because they're so great to us on our other podcasts. And especially Next Stop Everywhere. So I want to give them some love.
Oh, they're wonderful, wonderful ladies. Very much so.
Exactly. Although I have yet to be invited on their podcast. I'm just pointing this out. Just saying.
I might have to have a talk with a few of them.
I'm trying not to take it personally. But, just saying. All right.
Mr. Skaggs could get very offended, ladies. So you don't want an offended Charles Skaggs on your case.
No. It's all right. I'm not gonna invite myself on their podcast. They're probably they're probably too smart to have me on their podcast. So all right. But thank you again as always, Holly. It's wonderful. You're always a delight, and we loved having you on here on Titan Talk. Nick, where can they reach you?
Well, for you country music lovers, I do host a Whiskey and Cigarettes show where we play traditional country, today's country, and everything else in between. For more about that and where to tune in, you can visit our website. That's whiskeyandcigarettesshow.com. When it comes to podcast land, when I'm not hanging out with my friend Charles here on Titan Talk, if superhero movies are your speed, you can find me hosting the Happiness in Darkness podcast, where we discuss superhero movies from Marvel, DC, Dark Horse, Image, and more. If you'd like to join us on there and discuss a superhero movie of your choice, you can send us an email at happinessanddarknesshow@gmail.com, and we'll supply you with a list of films left to cover. Also, outside of that, recently on another great podcast of ours, which I definitely hope you guys check out, when it comes to Zan Sprouse and Rachel Friend, of course, one of the Five-ish Fangirls. That's Gold Standard, the Oscars movie podcast, where we're reviewing all the movies that won the Oscar for Best Picture in chronological order from 1927's Wings to present day. This Thursday, we will be discussing the fifth film to win the award, which will be Grand Hotel. And should any listeners wish to join us for that, or as guest co-hosts, or to simply share their thoughts in writing on that movie, they can email us at goldstandardoscars@gmail.com. Both Happiness in Darkness and Gold Standard can be found, like this podcast, where you get your podcasts. And when it comes to you, Charles, what about you?
Well, first I should mention that I forgot to talk about, hey, if you want to be like Holly, you want to write to us, please drop us a line at titantalkcast@gmail.com. That's titantalkcast@gmail.com. Sorry about that, because I just kind of got ahead of myself there. Apologies. But otherwise, you can also reach us on Twitter at Titan Talkcast on Twitter, or Titan Talk, the Titans podcast on Facebook. We'd love it if you liked and follow us there. And please share our links because, hey, we'd obviously love to keep growing our audience. As for me, of course, you can reach me at Charles Skaggs on the Twitter machine or at Charles Skaggs on the Instagrams and my blog, Geeky Things.
Damn good coffee. And hot.
Damn good coffee and hot. Where I talk about all the stuff we talk about here on Titan Talk, including, your Titans news, your Doom Patrol news, all kinds of comic book TV news of my other podcasts that I do for the Southgate Media Group, including, Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast, where I do with Jesse Jackson and assorted special guest companions, including a certain DJ Nick from time to time, where we talk a lot of classic Who, new Doctor Who, or Torchwood and Sarah Jane Adventures, and also the Phantom Zone podcast they also do with Jesse, where currently we're in the home stretch of Stargirl Season 1. Only got a couple more episodes to go on that one, so stay tuned as we find out how it ends for season 1. And then Ghostwood, the Twin Peaks podcast that I do with Zan Sprouse, Nick's partner on Gold Standard, the Oscars podcast, where we talk all things Twin Peaks, David Lynch, and assorted whatever nonsense that pops into our brains at the time. And right now we're going to be, this coming Thursday, we're going to be finally recording our Ghostwood Criterion Collection review of David Lynch's 2001 film Mulholland Drive, as we go deep diving through the special features, and that should be a lot of fun.
I'm really looking forward to that one, Charles. Definitely.
Yeah, so fingers crossed it comes off. Nick, you better take care of Zan. Make sure she gets on that podcast. I'm going to hold you accountable.
I'll do my best, sir.
All right. I trust you. So, everybody, thank you so much for listening. Nick, I had a ball. I love talking Doom Patrol with you. I get so carried away with myself because I enjoy talking with you so much, and I hope you feel the same.
Oh, well, it's definitely mutual. I had a blast talking to you, Charles, and it's an amazing journey so far, and I think it's just going to get more and more entertaining and fun. I hope our listeners enjoyed it, and of course, I want to echo your sentiment of thank you, everybody who tunes in and supports this podcast. We really, really appreciate it. It means the world to us both.
Yeah, we get some nice downloads off of this one. So thanks to everybody who listens. Keep sharing the links, and then come on back next time, episode 57, as we hit the final third of Doom Patrol season 2. God, we're almost finishing up here very closely already. As we talk Dumb Patrol,
yes,
DUMB Patrol, as the 7th episode of Doom Patrol season 2, where the Doom Patrol has an interesting encounter with some interesting aliens. I'll just put it that way. And we'll be talking a little bit more about the Scants and their connection to Gerard Way,
yep,
the creator of the Umbrella Academy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, another fantastic series.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a whole. That should be a whole different podcast that we do, because that's been a ball.
Oh, it's been stupendous, really.
Because season 2 premiered here over the weekend.
Yeah,
I'm already like 5 episodes through it, so I'm really enjoying it. And so it kind of helps tide us over in between Doom Patrol episodes. So everybody, thanks again for listening. Come on back, episode 57, Doom Patrol. Do I have to talk about it more? I don't think I do. And Nick and I will see you next time right here on Titan Talk, the Titans podcast. Goodbye, everybody.
Ciao.